This is the OnePlus 5T. It's a smartphone that I've been using for the past couple of months, and I'm only just getting to the review now, but I've got to say, this is an amazing smartphone for its price, especially considering it's about half the cost of a new Samsung Galaxy. And the camera is amazing, hence why I trusted it with capturing the special moments from when my son was born. Stick around to find out more. It's TechWiz time. Hey guys, Jonathan here with TechWizTime, where I create technology tutorial and review videos. First, to get this out of the way, Gearbest did send me the OnePlus 5T to review. However, they didn't give me any money, and thoughts and opinions are definitely my own. So one of the main selling points that I can see with this phone here is its camera quality. So I'm going to start it off right there. It's got a 16 megapixel front-facing camera for selfies, and it's got a 21 megapixel rear, as well as an extra 16 megapixel rear. Just for low light, not that whole dual camera blurriness thing. And just to show you how good the quality of this camera is, here's a photo of me just moments after my son was born. Now the quality is crisp, it's clear, and just everything in this photo just came off really, really nice looking. When it comes to video, this actually takes 4K footage. So I did a couple of 4K footage tests down at the beach. I didn't lock the exposure in, so just be aware of that. It's gonna go a little bit different in color, but you can see here, or if you want to see it in its 4K glory, I've got a link up above at the moment where you can check it out as a 4K file. But this is beautiful, like it's recording the sea as it comes crashing in, and it just sounds and looks amazing. So for me alone, the camera quality on this phone was definitely worth the roughly $500 price tag. In US dollars, I should say. So with that little gush out of the way, just because, again, I love the quality of this camera, let's have a look at the specs and I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what else this phone is in terms of specs and what else it can actually do in terms of gaming and so forth. So in here is the Snapdragon 835 processor, which is an 8-core 2.45 gigahertz processor. It's got the Adreno 540 GPU inside, so quite a powerful GPU. Built into it is 64 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigabytes of DDR4 memory. So that's quite important that it's DDR4, by the way. Next up, we've got Bluetooth 5.0, so it's the latest version in there, as well as 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So this should offer higher Wi-Fi speeds. Now it's got the headphone jack inbuilt, which is great, so you don't need an adapter there. It's got USB-C, so it's the latest version of USB there. The one thing that it doesn't have though is expansion for a micro SD card. So if you are looking to expand that 64 gigabytes of storage, unfortunately you're not going to be able to do it with a micro SD card. You could probably do it through the USB-C port though with an adapter. Now when this first came out, it wasn't Android 7.1.1. However, since the release of this phone, it has actually been upgraded to Android 8. Oh, and another thing too, if you do happen to order the Chinese version, which is H2O instead of the Oxygen Oz, then there is a way that you can actually upgrade this to the US version. So if you want to know how to do that, leave me a comment down below and I can create a tutorial around it. Oh, one other thing that this has got as well is NFC. So for those people out there that use NFC with their bank cards and so forth, then this is a great phone for that. So out of the box, this phone isn't rooted. However, there is a community out there that can offer you help with that. But again, it's a little bit tricky and could void your warranty. So just be a little bit careful there rooting your OnePlus 5T. The inbuilt battery is 3300 milliamp hours, so not too bad. And next onto the screen quality. Now the screen is a 2160 by 1080p AMOLED display at 6.01 inches. And the quality of the screen is pretty top notch in my opinion. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's have a look at some benchmarks and we'll start off with storage and RAM to start with. So that's using the A1 SD Bench tool. Now the internal read speed, we're getting 431 megabytes per second here. On the internal write speed, however, we're getting 213 megabytes per second. Still not too bad in terms of speed. When it comes to the speed of the RAM, however, we're getting some pretty good results here. We're getting 6,997 megabytes per second. And of course we can't test the SD card speed because there's no way to put an SD card inside this one, unfortunately. Next up, we've got the Wi-Fi speed with speed test. We're getting 173 megabits per second down, and on the upload, we're getting 73 megabits per second. So that's pretty decent. It's pretty much the max speed that my connection is, so not too bad there. Next up, we've got Antutu. Now on the overall score, we're getting a score of 174,672. We're getting a 3D score of 68,980. We're getting a UX score of 56,460. We're getting a CPU score of 39,076. And lastly, we're getting a RAM score of 10,156. Some pretty impressive speeds there. Okay, so the next one we're gonna do is do the Geekbench test, which tests out the CPU and how it performs on single and multi-cores. So on the single core score, we're getting 1973, and on the multi-core score, we're getting 6647. Next up, we're gonna test out the GPU capabilities with 3D Mark. And in the Slingshot test, we're getting a score of 4193. But in Slingshot Extreme, we're getting a score of 3430. Next up, we've got ICESTORM, and here we're getting a score of 14,580. And in ICESTORM Extreme, we're getting a score of 14,318. Pretty decent results. When it comes to streaming, the two most popular streaming apps out there are Netflix and YouTube. And with YouTube, we're getting full 1080p resolution here. What's the point of going 4K when it's only a 1080p screen? And Netflix works straight out of the box, so no issues there at all. So the last thing that I like to do here after all those other benchmarks is I like to test out the gaming on this. Now, normal Android gaming on the OnePlus 5T is gonna be fine. It's gonna smash anything that you put in it. But when it comes to emulation, some titles will not work well, apparently, but we'll have a look at the test and you'll see what I mean. Because to be honest, the power of this phone is pretty much gonna smash most things that you throw at it. So the first emulator that I've got here is PPSSPP, which is the PlayStation Portable emulator for Android. And the first game up is Power Stone, a one-on-one brawler. And you can see here that it's getting a full 60 frames per second, which is awesome. And next up is the notorious God of War. And on a lot of devices, this just does not like playing fair. But with the OnePlus 5T, we're getting between 55 to 60 frames per second. So this is what I would call more than playable. So the power of this system on a chip inside this phone is amazing. Next up, we've got the Raycast emulator, which is the Dreamcast emulator for Android. And the first game up is Sonic Adventure 2. And based on the results that we just got with the PlayStation Portable emulator, this one smashes it again at 60 frames per second. The cult classic Shenmue is up next, and that's getting a full 30 frames per second here. Shenmue 3 is on the way, so hopefully at the end of this year, we might see something there. And lastly is Soul Calibur. Now the graphical glitches that you see here is actually part of the emulation, so it's not to do with the phone at all. And even with that, we're getting 60 frames per second, so really great. And lastly, even though we know it's gonna smash it, is the PlayStation emulation, and this is using FPSE. And the first game off the ranks is Final Fantasy VII, and of course we're getting 60 frames per second. After that, Metal Gear Solid, again, 60 frames per second. And lastly, Tekken 3, which can be a problem on some devices, but smashes it. 60 frames per second. So, all in all, OnePlus 5T is a very capable emulation device, as well as an all-rounder. With the camera that it's got in here, if you're looking for something that is going to take great photos when you're out traveling or when you're out and about with your kids or whatever, those memories that you really want to keep, then I can highly recommend this phone for its camera alone. So is it worth the $500 price tag, US dollars I should say, that this phone has? In all honesty, I've got to say yes. With the iPhones that are coming out now that are between $1,000 and $1,500, the Samsung Galaxies that are right up there in the $1,000 price range as well, this phone coming in at $500 is more than capable. And the main thing people use their phones for is either gaming on the go or with the camera. And this has both. So if you're sitting on the fence, I've got to say this is an awesome phone for $500. Do you want to see more awesome tech gadget reviews and tutorials? Then subscribe to this channel and make sure you hit that bell icon so you get email notifications. Did you like this video? Then give it a thumbs up and consider checking out my Patreon campaign if you loved what I'm doing here. You can help the community grow by sharing this video on social media platforms like Reddit or Facebook groups. And don't forget to check out these other awesome videos. And as always, imagine, learn, create.